want to be able to show this and people look at it and be like, that's a photography company. But I want it to stand out enough where I'm not blending in, where I'm not being noticed. So understanding what my competitors are doing was really beneficial to me to really understand where I should start and give me some ideas of how I should move forward. And then from there, once I kind of understood, okay, here's kind of what I'm going for, here what my competitors are doing, I started to literally just sketch out different designs. Whoa, I went too far. I'm sorry, guys. And this is, I literally did this. Now you can sketch out on paper. That's fine. Just because we're on a computer doesn't mean everything has to be on the computer. You can just find a notebook, find a piece of paper, and just start sketching out ideas. They don't have to be perfect. They don't, you know what I mean? Like you can use boxes, like put boxes in places of where you want things to go. Quickly draw out, like it doesn't have to even be drawn nicely. Like mine are kind of like scribbly if you really look closely. And obviously, obviously this would be a perfect circle. Things aren't going to be perfect when you're sketching things out, but this is really just for me to start exploring and getting things on a page to understand where do I want to go. I actually didn't even end up with this. My logo looks nothing like this. This was literally how I just started. And then from there, I'll get a better understanding of, okay, I really like certain logos, but I think I can explore them a little bit, but here's a really great place to start. And then from there, you can do one of two things. You can just open up Illustrator based on that logo, start recreating it. You can actually bring in those sketches that you've created and actually start drawing over them within Illustrator. And the way that you will do that is it's pretty easy. If you sketched on a piece of paper, take a literally a picture of it with your phone and then open it up and then get it on your desktop. Now, if you have let's say you have an iPhone and you also have like a Mac, and you have Apple products, you can just AirDrop the image to yourself onto your computer. Maybe you need to email yourself the picture and then open up your email on your desktop, and then you can download the image that way. So there's a couple different ways. If it's like, let's say you have Android and like it's all Google, you upload your picture to Google Photos, and then you open up Google Photos and on your desktop within your web browser, download the image that way. So that's how you can get your image from your phone to your computer. And then from there, you would literally in Illustrator, you go up to File and you'd click Place. It'll open up this browser window, or not browser window. It'll open up this window where now you can go through wherever it is. It's most likely going to be like in your downloads. And you can start choosing, okay, this is the image I wanted. Let me place it. And then once you click place, your icon will change and then you can scale it out as big as you want. And now you have your image within Illustrator. That's what I did when it came to this. I actually, I did this on my iPad, just like on like a random app that came with the iPad where I can kind of draw, because I have a little Apple Pencil. So I was just like sketching it out. And here's the thing, I was just like sitting while the TV was on. And I was just kind of doodling. Honestly, doodling isn't bad. People want to say, oh, don't doodle. No, doodle, because you come up with ideas. And I just started just sketching out like different things, different just graphics that I was thinking about, and then started to piece together some of the words, maybe get an idea somewhat of the type of the type of typography I want to use. Do I want to use a sans serif font, a serif font, maybe something a little bit more cursive, right? Again, nothing is exact. This doesn't exactly represent the actual choices. This is really just getting my ideas out on paper. And again, there is no one correct idea, right? I'm just working through these sketches to really determine the overall direction I'd like to go. And then from there, I finalized my sketches and then I brought them into Illustrator. And then from there, if you notice, I definitely am very text heavy with some of my logos, especially like this one down here at the bottom. And then there are some graphical elements in here as well. Now, I really like the way my graphical elements are, so I might want to trace them. This is the magnifying tool that you're using. Know that if you ever, or zoom tool, but if you ever aren't sure about what tools do what, if you literally just leave your mouse over them, Adobe does a really great job of giving you a little preview and telling you what they do. So if you're ever not sure, you can always just do that. So from there, I am going to actually start building out some of these things. So let's say this was the logo that I kind of wanted to work with. I can actually just use some shapes to start building it out. So I'm going to go over here to my shape tool. Right now it's set to rectangle. If you right click, if you see this little tiny arrow in the corner here, that tells you that there's more behind this. So if you right click on this, here we go. If you right click, you'll see that you now have access to a couple different shapes. And these are basic shapes that you work with, but you can manipulate these shapes to be closer to the shape that you actually want. So you don't have to necessarily say, this is the only shape I can use. It's like, no, it just gives you starting a place to start. So I want the ellipse tool, which makes it into a circle. I'm going to not just click with my mouse, but I'm actually going to hold down Shift. When you hold down Shift, it keeps things proportional. So that it's all nice and even. It's a perfect circle. If I let go of Shift, well, now I can make it any size and it's not proportional. I can make it more of an oval. I can basically just make it more of an oval. This is hard when you want a perfect circle. Now you have to eyeball it a little bit. But if you just hold down Shift, it'll be a perfect circle every single time. And then once I'm done, I'm going to release my click and then my Shift. And then now I have this perfect circle. And I'm going to go over here to the black arrow tool, which is your selection tool. You're going to be using that a lot because that's how you just select things in general. And then you can start kind of lining up with your overall design. Right now, this is full of black and it has no stroke. When you hear the word stroke, it means the outline. So the outline of the overall shape. Again, what's nice too, Adobe, hold your mouse over this. It'll tell you the fill is on the top, the stroke is on the back. If you were to click either one of these, it'll just, when it comes to the front, that means that's what you're working with. I want my stroke to be black. Actually, no, I want my stroke to be a different color so it stands out from my overall design. I want my fill to be transparent. So I don't want any color. So thankfully, we have these default colors here, colors, swatches, they're also known as. I'm going to click none because I don't want my fill to be anything. And then I'm going to go over here to stroke. I do want that to be a color. So I can do one of two things. I can double click it, or I can go over here to where you see color and I can start choosing colors based on this. I can also go to color guide. So you have a lot of options when it comes to all the different colors that you can explore. But if you really want to be very specific, I say always double click on it and choose from here. Choose from the color picker window, and you can really choose a color that works for you. Now, for this specific step in my design process, it really doesn't matter. I'm not choosing a color that's going to represent my brand. I'm just choosing a color to help me differentiate between the black outlines of my sketch and the new outlines I'm creating when I'm building it out in Illustrator. So keep that in mind. You can actually choose color for the actual design later. I always say that should be kind of like one of the last steps that you do is choose color. Just working in black and white from the beginning helps you to focus on the actual design and the structure of the design, and then work in color later in order to take your design to the next level. So right now, the only reason why I'm putting this in a specific color is just so that I can tell the difference between the black outlines that I've made for my sketch and then the new outlines I'm creating. So from there, let's keep doing that. From there, I'm going to keep building out this overall shape based on what I've designed. You're probably looking at this and you're saying, well, half of this is cut off. Like, why are you doing it that way? Well, I'll show you how to get rid of that portion. But if that's not something you want to do, right? If you're like, no, I don't want to have to go through those extra steps, you could always use the pen tool. The pen tool will be your friend. And the pen tool literally just helps you to almost do more of a free form type of line creation. So every time you click, you create a point. That's my starting point. And then if I click again, it'll create an actual like connection between those points where now you have that stroke. And if I click and drag, that's where I can add a little bit of a curve to the overall shape. If I click on it again and then click again, I can add another, I can add a perfect line, click, You're just literally clicking. That's all this pen tool really does is you click around to make your shape. Hold down shift if you want a perfect straight line. And then if you want to close up your shape, you just hover over that starting point that you created. And when you see that little tiny circle pop up next to your pen tool, that means you are closing up the shape. So now this is an actual shape that I've created. But again, that might cause you to do more work. So you can kind of go with whatever feels more comfortable. I want to make sure that I kind of have perfect straight lines. So I wouldn't necessarily use the pen tool for this specific project. I would rather use the shapes for this. But it's definitely up to you guys in terms of what you feel most comfortable with. Sorry, I just want to make sure. So this is my layers panel, my layers palette, my layers panel. If I were to lock specific things on my layer, then I can't click them and move them. That's really great if you are kind of drawing over something. I don't want to accidentally select this image and then move it unintentionally. So I'm just going to lock it so it stays in place. And that way I can focus more so on what I am actually designing. So again, from here to go back, I'm going to continue to go through and kind of trace out what this some of these graphics look like. Stacy, you had a question.
Yeah, I noticed that whenever I was in the Illustrator, I would try and lock one layer, but then they would all lock, and I'm not sure how to just lock one specific one.
Yeah. So if your panel, your layers palette probably look like this. If I were to click the lock, it would lock every single thing on that layer, regardless if I wanted to lock it or not. In order to lock things individually, you just need to click this little down arrow, and then you'll have access to everything that's on that layer. And then from there, you can click the little circle and it'll like highlight what everything is on the page. So that I'm a little too far in. So for instance, the sketch that I brought in here, if I click this little circle, it'll actually select it. And then I know, okay, this is what I want to lock. And then once you're, it has to be selected, that specific thing that you want to lock. Then you're going to go over to it and click the little lock area, and it'll lock that specific element on the page. But you need to make sure you click that little drop down arrow in order to see everything that's on that layer. And then from there, you can select all those different elements individually, and then you can lock them individually.
Yeah, it just like I don't know why it kept locking all the like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Like if I clicked on layer 1, it would like lock all the layers. Like if that makes sense.
Yeah. So every layer can have multiple elements underneath it. So you lock the whole entire layer. So now I lock this whole layer. I can't click on it like any of this because it's all
Well,
in the same layer.
I mean,
So
yeah, but it would also do the one under that one. Like if that makes sense. It would do that one and then it would do the other ones. Like it wouldn't do it individually. I don't know why.
you
Not
might
all
have
the
it.
things.
That's the thing. You might have it all underneath the same layer. So you just might need to reorganize this a little bit. To create a new layer, you would just go down here at the bottom where this little square and plus sign is. That creates a brand new layer. There's nothing on this layer. So
Okay.
let's say I wanted to move some of my elements to this specific layer. I could. And now those elements are now housed on this layer. If I double click where it says layer 3, I can actually rename it. I can actually rename it so that I'm a little bit more organized. So I know exactly what I am selecting so that I know, okay, this is for my logo design 1, right? My options of my logo design for the first one. And then if I want to lock it, I can. If I want to hide it, I can. The little eyeball says if you can hide it or not. And then, it just helps you stay more organized and so that you don't accidentally click something or have things grouped together that you didn't want to be grouped together. So I think that might be where you need to go with that. It literally might just be you just need to reorganize all your letters in order to make sure you can click things really easily and lock them.
I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But again, from here, I'm gonna like, let's say I went through and I outlined everything. If you notice here, I still have this kind of area that I need to get rid of. So what you can do in order to get rid of that is you can actually work with your a different panel. We're going over time a little bit, so I kind of need to hurry up. So you are actually going to go over here. You can use your properties panel. That's where you can definitely align things correctly. You can also go into, it's called Pathfinder. Um, if you ever needed to access one of the little panels here and it's not up here, you just go to window and here are all the different panels that you can work from. And Pathfinder is going to be super helpful for you guys when you are creating some of these shapes. Oh wait, did I hit Pathfinder? Did I hit pattern? Yeah, I hit pattern. Here we go. Here's Pathfinder. So here's where I'm going to actually kind of delete some of these things. Now I can do one of two things. I can, again, if you hover over them, it tells you I can unite all of them, making it one large shape. I can minus the front, which it takes away anything that's in the front. I can intersect, meaning all those intersecting lines are the only things that are left over. Or I can exclude, meaning, you know, whatever it is I want to exclude, I can exclude. I don't really have anything there. That's for shape modes. And then Pathfinder, you can divide, meaning you can divide all of the different parts of the shape into something different. So for instance, I divided it based on all the different places where it overlaps. And then in order to get more of kind of that shape that I wanted, I can start getting rid of some areas. That could be a way that you do this. You could also just come here. There's trim, there's merge. That's again, if you want it to be one file. There's crop, there's outline, and then there's minus the back. So you could definitely work with all of the different Pathfinder and shape modes in order to get the shape that you really want for your overall graphic or any element that you're creating on this. This is definitely way easier than necessarily selecting. So another way that I can do this is I can use the white selection tool. This is a direct selection tool where you can actually select each individual point within your shape and you can manipulate them. You can move them around or by just clicking and dragging, or you can literally hit delete and it'll start getting rid of them. So that's another way that I can definitely do this. It may take a little longer. I might need to create a little bit more in order to make sure everything lines up correctly and I'm not missing anything. But that's another way that you can also kind of manipulate your shapes a little bit more. I usually do like a combination of both. I'll pick one of these shape modes or Pathfinder modes, and I'll pick one that makes the most sense for how I want to see this shape. And then from there, I might start, using the white arrow tool and deleting more things away. So that's definitely something that you guys can play around with. Now, if you want to, let's say you have your shapes or maybe some other lines that you want to incorporate, right? This is literally just the line tool, very similar to the pen tool, except you literally are just making lines. Now I just created all these lines. I want to make sure I add that right stroke to it. The back is the stroke. Now, if you want to manipulate the overall stroke, so that you're going to hear that term a lot, the stroke of it, it's just the line, the weight of the line, the if there's arrows or dashes, if it's a certain color, if there's some type of style choice that you've added to them, you can manipulate all of that as well to really represent kind of what you're thinking of doing within your designs. If you up the stroke, you are increasing the overall weight of the stroke, meaning you're making it thicker. And then you can also mess around with the actual kind of the artistic value of that stroke. And there's a lot in here. You have access to a big library here that you can kind of go through and just start picking all the different ways that you want to showcase the lines really on the page. So you can manipulate it in a lot of different ways, whichever one works best for your design. Like for what I'm doing more of an artistic, sketchy type thing doesn't really work for what I want to do. But I would definitely change the uniform. I want to be uniform. I would probably change one of these things for my specific design. Stacey, you had another question?
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to follow. I'm trying to see how you got that bar on the top of your screen like that showed the weights that you can change your
Oh,
stroke.
you just select it. You just select the line.
Okay. I
All I did
never
was
saw
select
that
the
on
line.
there. Maybe I'm just missing it
Yeah.
or something.
You might need to adjust your artboard. So arrange your artboard, view, I'm sorry, not artboard. I don't know what I'm saying artboard. Delete artboard from your brain. Workspace. So my workspace is I just have the Essentials Classic on. There might be other ways you can mess around with this Essentials. It's going to change what your workspace looks like. Layout. It'll just highlight different things that you want to make sure that are highlighted every single time. But if you click something, regardless if you click on a shape or a line or text or anything like that, then up here you're just going to get a little bit more tools and different things that you can work with. So know that too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then from there, so let's say I create everything and I like the way the graphic looks like, then I'm going to start incorporating some of my typography. That's where you're going to go with your type tool. And by default, it's almost nap time. And Coco Melon must have stopped working because she should be watching Coco Melon right now. When you first open up your type tool, this is called filler text. If you can't read it, that's okay. Like nobody can. You're not meant to read this. This is just filler text. You're not losing it. Some people get a little nervous when they see this because they're just like, I can't read this. What's wrong with me? That's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. This is just filler text. This is just there just in case you don't have all the content you need in order to create something. This can just be used as a placeholder. So it might automatically fill that up. But for me, I want to actually type out Pathlight. But if you notice too, on a lot of my designs, I have it as 2 words. So I might just want to start out with path first. I'm going to make sure my bounding box is kind of like overall the same size as my actual font. You can make it bigger if you want. Oops. Once you, sorry, all right. Once you double click within this text box, you can hit Command A. Actually, just selects all the letters in within the box, and then from there you can start manipulating your text. So once I've highlighted that, I'm gonna. Oh, I changed my workspace. I forgot. Once you highlight all the text that you want to manipulate, you can go over here to your properties tool, your properties panel. Again, if you don't see that, that's pretty default for when you first open Illustrator, but for whatever reason, always go to window and then you can always navigate down to properties, click that, and then that little panel will show up. And then from there, the properties panel, you can start manipulating the fill, the stroke, right? So the fill would be the actual color of the text. The stroke would be the outline if you wanted to incorporate an outline. Opacity. This is the same thing for everything. Opacity is how transparent your overall thing is that you are selecting. So if I say lower the opacity or make it more transparent, that is what you're doing. You are literally literally you can select opacity or just a little drop down. And now if you look at path, I'm making it more and more transparent. And when I say transparent, I mean you can see whatever behind it. So if I were to put a color here, I'm just going to pick a random color and I made it like a blue. Well, it's a really light transparent blue. But if I were to lower the opacity even more, it would be even lighter. If I were to have it at 100%, you'd be able to see that color at 100%. So that's what I mean by lowering the opacity. Stacey, do you still have a question or is your hand just still up?
No, sorry, I forgot to take it down.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I'm not missing it.
Okay.
But yeah, if you guys ever hear me say, "Oh, lower the opacity," I just want it to be a little bit. I'm just letting you know, hey, try to make it a little bit more transparent, which really helps with helping to see your typography a little more clearly, so you can easily read something. But anyway, once I select path, right, if I wanted to change the the color of the fill, I can. I say leave it black and white until you're kind of finalizing it. Here's the more important part that you guys really need to pay attention to. It's selecting the font. Font is super duper important. Font can also make or break your designs. If you're picking something that is really hard to read, right? That's hard to read. Well, then your user, they're not going to want to read it and they're going to leave. Right? If you pick something You want to pick something that's, yeah, like definitely has maybe a little something to it, right? You could definitely pick a more creative font. You just need to make sure that it's super easy to read and super easy to understand, that readability, legibility. Now, as you guys design more and more, there just might be fonts that you just love. I love Avenir. It's such a nerdy thing to say. I love this font. I would literally create a t-shirt that says I love Avenir, and I'd make sure the typography was in Avenir. This is my default font. I always go to it. And this is, if anything, this is a font that I always start out with because I know I can always change it and build from it. And there it just comes with a lot of different weights. And when I say weight, I mean it can be bold, it can be light. Uh if you see the term oblique, that just means italics. I don't know why. It's just this is a different way to say italics, but in design, when you're working with typography, you might see the term oblique. Again, it just means italics. So I can definitely work with the overall weight of the actual text. I just really like the options I have, and I just think it's a really clean text. That's not me saying you should go and use this. I'm saying is, as a designer, I have found that this is a font, a typeface that I really like to use. So I use a lot. So once I've decided, okay, that's going to be maybe my overall, that's going to be my font. Maybe I want to make it bigger, right? Maybe I'm looking at this option here and I'm going to be like, you know what? I think I want to make this a lot bigger. Well, again, double click it. You'll definitely have, you might have these little boxes here that might help you do it with the size and the font that you're choosing. You can also go over here to property, the little two little T's that are next to each other. One's small, one's big. That's the size. And then you can just increase the size, and or either by just picking one of these numbers in here. You can also click in here and actually type in the numbers that you want. You could also select the edges and hit, if you hold down Command Shift, you can also make this a lot. Oops, not Command Shift. I think, yeah. Why is it mine? Do they change it? Sorry, sometimes they change the overall, whatever. All right, I'm not gonna do it this way. So you just highlight it and then just change the overall size of the text. And what's nice too is that you can also get a preview before you even click it. If you just hover over each one of these numbers, you get an idea of how big it's actually going to be. I'll keep it at 100. Now, something to note is that you can also typography is made up of shapes. It's made up of lines and shapes. That's what typography is made up of. You can actually manipulate those lines and shapes by creating outlines. So you can right click, create outlines, and now each one of these letters is now a shape. And if I hold down Shift, I can make it bigger. If I go to my white selection tool, I can now manipulate all the different edges of my type. I can move it around, right? So if I wanted to do, I really wanted to manipulate my typography into something that really more works for what I envision it for, I can do that. So it's really important to know all those different features so that you can really just have, just have a variety of things that you can use it for. For this piece, I don't necessarily want to change the overall placement or the overall, like I don't want to change it that extreme. I more so just want to make it longer. So what you can do is you can actually just click and drag to select a couple different points at a time. If you hold down Shift and then continue to click, you can start highlighting more and more points within the overall shapes, whether it's for typography or not. And then once you've highlighted enough, you can definitely click and drag and start moving things down. If you've accidentally clicked things that you don't want to click, you can always go back in, click them individually, click a couple at a time, and then you can also click and drag them back to wherever it is that you saw them before. They're still selected. So if I just hit the arrow tool on my keyboard, I can also adjust them as well. And you might want to do that because if you lengthen it or alter it in any way, it just might be altered in a way where you're like, I don't really like that. I want to fix that. But that's another way that you can kind of start manipulating text a little bit more. The P is going to be difficult. There you go. So now I have path kind of extended out, made more so the way I want it to be displayed in um, this bottom option. I'm going to just create a white box for now, just so that I can see what it would look like if I were to break this in half. I might not be ready for that portion yet, but that also gives me an idea of where I should maybe break this in half so that path is still readable. Because again, regardless of how you manipulate this, you want this to be as readable and legible as possible. I'm going to create another bounding box. It's going to default to 100 because that's what I made the last one. So I got to change that. And I don't want that in all caps because I want there to be contrast. But I want to pick a font also that mimics something that I kind of thought about when I was creating this overall my initial sketch. So I just want to pick, like I said, I just want to pick something that kind of represents that really well. But doesn't mean it necessarily has to be the exact thing that I chose. There's also a lot of free websites where you can go to in order to pick a font that better aligns with maybe what you want to do, right? So from here, I might want to manipulate it a little bit more. I don't really like stretching out my fonts too much because that might make it hard to read. Maybe this isn't it. I don't really like the way this is coming out. If you hit Command Z, it undoes everything that you've did and you can actually go back pretty far. So I just hit Command Z until I was back at a point where I wanted to restart from. And then from there, you can kind of maybe go through some of the different fonts that you might have already stored on your computer within the program. You might want to find more, right? So this will go through your Adobe. If you were to go to different websites, you could definitely download them. And once you install them into your computer, they'll automatically populate within in all your design programs. But that's definitely something that you can really start working with in order to pick the right font for your design. But always make sure that regardless of the fonts that you choose, always make sure you're choosing something that complements each other. Your fonts should complement does not mean the same. It just means they go well with each other. So right now I have a very plain, this is actually a sans serif font for path. And I'm pairing that with a more calligraphy cursive type of font when I write the word light. They're not the same exact type of font. One's a little thicker, one's a little thinner. One is very plain text with hard lines. The other one's cursive-y, right? It has a little bit more flow to it. They are different, but they still complement each other. When we use fonts that are too close to each other, well, then it can get really hard for your viewer to differentiate between the two fonts. And now it's like, why is that looking a little different, right? And they'll start questioning that. And now they're focusing on why those fonts look a little different and not the actual thing that it says. Like they're not going to focus on the fact that this says Pathlight. They're going to focus on the fact that they're trying to figure out why that font is slightly off compared to the other font. So you might go through here and again, you might notice, you know what, I don't really have any fonts. You can go always and look, look for more fonts. You might, look at this and say, I don't like the way this is turning out at all. Then you can change it. Maybe you want to pick a different one. Right? Maybe you want to change up the whole idea, but this whole process really just helps you to determine, okay, what works, what doesn't work. I had this idea. It doesn't work for what I thought it was going to work for. So maybe I should try something different. Maybe I should try a different font or a different style. Maybe I should abandon this and start somewhere else. Or maybe I just need to tweak some things to really get it to where I want it to be. So maybe, I originally wanted this to be path light. Obviously I want to keep it to say path light, but maybe the word I want to be here, maybe it's not, maybe it shouldn't be light. Maybe it should be photography, right? Maybe I should just, reorganize like how maybe I want to do this. That's definitely something that you can do, right? And you can always add in some more graphical elements to really take this to the next level, to really add some more visual interest. Again, work with lines. They don't have to be anything too They don't have to be anything too crazy in terms of, you know, but you also want to make sure that this reads really well. Like this probably isn't going to read well, so I probably need to change some stuff up about it in order to make this read a little bit better than what I had before. But again, during this build process of kind of going off of these sketches that I've already designed, I want to make sure that I'm creating something that obviously I'm proud of, but kind of also goes along with maybe what my client wants, what they need in order to really give them what they want and really engage with their overall audience. You know, maybe this is it. I don't know. I would still play around with this to get it to where I want it to be. But again, if you notice, balance, right? If there's something here on the top, I want to make sure there's something here on the bottom. There's something in here in the middle. I'm adding these lines as a way to add emphasis to photography so it doesn't get lost in these big chunky words. I'm making sure everything aligns nicely. I said earlier, when you are aligning, you might want to use rulers or guides. You can add those in within your overall design. You can go to, sorry, they always move everything. So I kind of need to relearn every time I go in here. View, yeah. Go to view, go to rulers, show rulers. You'll get some of these you'll get literally rulers at the top. So when you click on those rulers and drag them along, you can actually create some grids or guidelines. So that little blue line here, that is going to be a guideline for me. And I can even create a grid so that everything matches up really nicely. So I can make sure nothing is off, right? So in terms of my structure, I can make sure this is all there when using grids and guidelines. And always can you can just select them and you can move them a little bit. And then I can fill those different areas that I have, created by these little blue grid lines, guidelines with my typography or graphics to make sure everything is aligned nicely. Things have structure to it. I notice here, like this isn't perfectly centered. That's going to drive me crazy. I might want to move this down a little bit. Just because now with my grids here, I can tell that it's not perfectly aligned, and that's going to drive me up a wall. So I want to make sure that I can kind of gauge that. Okay, there's enough between each. But if I were to print this, these guidelines are not going to show up. The guidelines aren't to print. They're literally just for you as the designer to understand where to place things and how to align things. So I encourage you guys to really make sure you are using those grids and those guides. So that's kind of it. We're kind of running out of time. Here's kind of where I went with some of my other designs. I I clearly deleted or turned something off when I was messing around with my layers. Oh, I deleted a whole layer. That sucks. Oh well. So if you notice here, here is an idea I had in order for a finalized logo. If I were to select it, you can see, the different typography that I use, the shapes that I use. I lower the opacity of this little one in the circle in the middle. I decided to do a black box with white letters over top of it to add a little bit of contrast, just because there's a lot of white space within the overall design. This one up here, I just changed up the overall lines to form the actual camera. I decided not to use the L to make some of the camera, just kind of building off and really almost using my the actual lens of the camera to be the top of the eye rather than the eye be very literal. And then photography, I removed that black background because there's a lot of thick black areas here. So I didn't want to overpower it too much with more big, bold black areas. So I decided to leave this without a background. So these would be like my two examples of what I would maybe show my customer. Like, let's say it wasn't for me, it was for a customer. These are the two examples I would show them, and then they can choose which logo they want me to go with. or they can give me feedback and tell me what they like and don't like, which they could say, oh, I really like the boldness of the black box behind the white. So could you just add that to this one because we like this overall look and feel? Well, then I can do that. I can create a new, when I go into that phase where now I'm adding in their feedback. Why is this not letting me ungroup? I can now add in that to make something new. And again, they might say, oh, can you switch this up? Can you add this? Maybe they want me to add maybe like the, like the flashes going off. I don't know, whatever ideas they have. I can start working with those types of things in order to add that to this design as well. Here we go. And then I can start messing around with that. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, right? And overall, just to make this balance out a little bit more. So that's basically it. We are over like half hour. That's why I'm kind of combing through this a little faster than I would have liked. But that's kind of the overall design process and kind of how you would go about creating everything, building it out, switching things up, and really manipulating different parts of Illustrator to get a better idea of how to use it. Again, I suggest design all your initial designs in black and white. Don't worry about color until you finalize whatever the design is. So if this was my finalized design, then I could start working in color to really get an understanding of maybe how I want to showcase it in color. You might find that black might work, right? Maybe black might work, but I always suggest never just go off of the default colors here. Let that be your base, and then you can use colors that better represent kind of maybe what you want to do. And then, yeah, like I said, you can go through and start manipulating things and start adding in your color there little by little. But again, when you're using color, you never want to use too much color, especially for a logo. You kind of want to pick two colors and then incorporate neutrals like black and white to help make it pop a little bit more. I'm just literally picking colors. You might work with a company, organization, whatever it is. They have a specific type of color that you have to use. So you need to go through and make sure that you are working within those colors that they want you to use. So you would just need to make sure that you're aware. You might need to play around with colors, choose colors that best represent that that organization, that business. It might not be the colors you necessarily want, but it might be what they're looking for. So just also be open to different color schemes and whatever works really well with each other. I'm literally just going through and placing color in different places, just to add a little bit of color here. But again, when I'm placing color, that would be a whole nother process of adding color to this design in a way that makes the most sense. Oh, I must have selected the wrong one. So that this, obviously, yeah. So let's say that's the color scheme I wanted to go with, right? The client loves it. They're like, yes, let's go. Then I can go with that. They might look at this and say, I like the red, but I don't like the blue. Then you can kind of go through and start manipulating it. This looks very much like Tommy Hilfiger. I might want to change that. But again, that could be how you add color. But notice that I added color at the end. After I finalized my logo, then I started working with color. And that's where I could start playing around with, okay, I know what the design looks like. Now I can have fun with color to find out what color combos work best with each other and for whatever it is that I'm designing for.